So, I'm sure if you live on social media, you've seen the amount of people that want NASCAR to resort back to the OG Winston points format instead of the current playoff system that we have now. And I mean, it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening anytime soon, but we can still look at different hypotheticals. I mean, yeah, Jeff Gordon would have won 7 titles and Jimmy Johnson would only have 2. While it's cool to see how those would look in different seasons with this format, it did get me thinking, what if we use the Winston points format to see the championship result in other motorsports series? So let's go ahead and take a look at how Formula One would look if they used the Winston point format for every season of their existence. So for those who don't know, here's a quick rundown of how the Winston points format looks that we're going to be using for this video here. Obviously, this is the 1975 to 2003 format, so the race winner every week will get 175 points, second gets 170, and third 165, and so on and so on. You can see the rundown here. The way to get bonus points through this system is by leading laps. And if you manage to lead at least 1 lap, you're going to get 5 additional bonus points. But if you lead the most laps in a race, you're going to get 5 additional bonus points. So in the end, a driver can have a max points day of 185 points. Simple as that. Also, I will not factor in any penalties with this system. So if a driver got penalized during any point in the season and got points deductions in real life, we're not going to transfer that over to this system. We're just going to focus strictly on where drivers finish each week and tallying up all the results. But without further ado, let's get started. So the first official Formula One season took place all the way back in 1950. This only included 7 different Grand Prix and 78 total drivers getting points. One of these events, that is key to note, was the Indianapolis 500. Now, why was the Indy 500 on the F1 schedule? Well, F1 thought that with the prestige of this race, they wanted it on their schedule. So basically, F1 wanted the prestige to take over. But that event only would last until 1960 on the calendar. So we'll look at those first few seasons, including the Indianapolis 500. So that could sway some of the results. But now, as we're going to focus in on the points, we're going to take a look at how these results would be. Starting in 1950, it would be Nino Farina who would win the inaugural championship over Luigi Fagioli by just 14 points. As we look at the next year in 1951, we would see Juan Manuel Fangio win the title by 53 points over Alberto Ascari. And speaking of Ascari, he would be on his revenge tour the next 2 seasons, and he would win the title in 1952, beating 1950 champion Nino Farina, as well as Mike Hawthorne in 1953. Meanwhile, over the next 4 seasons, we would see something that would not be done for over 40 years, a driver winning 4 titles in a row. The 1951 champion Juan Manuel Fangio would win the championship in 1954, 55, 56, and 57. He would also rack up a total of 16 race victories in just 28 starts, which is a whopping 57% winning percentage. Although he would only run 2 more Grand Prix following the 1957 season before he would retire in 1958. Even though it was a short career, he still managed to win 22 races in just 51 starts, ending his career with an impressive 43.1 race winning percentage. But as we look at the rest of the standings, we'll conclude the 1950s and see 2 new champions. Mike Hawthorne would win it in 1958 and Jack Brabham in 1959. So to sum things up over this decade, the format would perfectly match IRL champions. The drivers who won it in this system would match the champions that we saw all the way back in the 50s. But that doesn't end up holding for long. Starting in 1960, we would see Phil Hill win the championship, beating the IRL champion Jack Brabham. This again would happen in 1961 as Dan Gurney would win the title over the IRL champion Phil Hill. This would also be the first time in Formula One that we would see a winless champion. That's right, he won the championship, Dan Gurney did, without winning a single race in the season. Congrats on the consistency, Dan, I'll give you. The next 2 seasons would see correct champions, as Graham Hill would win it in 1962 and Jim Clark in 1963. Graham Hill would win it once again in 1964, with IRL champion John Surtees finishing all the way down in third place. This season would also see the closest gap between first and second in F1 history, separating Hill and Richie Ginther by just one measly point. How about that? It's crazy how full season results can come down to just one singular point. It's funny because only one lap led in a race could make the difference. Pretty crazy to see. And similarly, in 1965, Hill would win it again with IRL champion Jim Clark finishing down in third. And the 60s would end here with more champions that match real life. Jack Brabham would win it in 66, Denny Hulme in 1967, Graham Hill in 1968, and Jackie Stewart in 1969. Starting in 1970, we would see something that we have yet to see today. Jackie Ickx would win the title with the IRL champion Jochen Rindt finishing all the way down in 12th place. Now, this would primarily be due to Ickx being consistent and running all 13 Grand Prix run that season, while Rindt only ran 10. But from here, we would see some similar champions the next few seasons that we did in real life. Jackie Stewart would win it for the second time in 1971, Emerson Fittipaldi would win it for the first time in 1972, and Jackie Stewart again would win it for the third time in 1973. IRL champion Emerson Fittipaldi would finish runner-up in 1974 to the first-time champion Clay Regazzoni. If we exclude the 1950 and 60 seasons when the Indy 500 wasn't included on the schedule, 1974 would also see the most driver entries that season with 56 in total. We would then see the film Rush take place over the next two seasons, with Niki Lauda winning it in 1975 and his rival James Hunt winning it in 1976. Lauda would not win it in 1977 like real life says, as Carlos Reutemann would get it done that season. And the 70s would end with two lone champions in Mario Andretti getting it done in 1978 and Jody Scheckter in 1979. Alan Jones would kick off the 80s winning his first and only career championship that season, and IRL champion Nelson Piquet would finish runner-up in 1981 to now two-time champion Carlos Reutemann, who, by the way, did not win a single title in real life. Pretty crazy to see how this standing can change. Keke Rosberg would be the next driver to get his first and only title in 1982, and Nelson Piquet would get revenge for 1981 by winning it in total in 1983. Lauda would then get his second and final career title in 1984, 9 years after his first one. This season would also feature the second closest margin between the top two points finishers, as five-time winner Lauda that season would beat the seven-time winner Alan Prost by just 2 points. Prost would then get the last laugh, winning 4 championships in the last 5 seasons of the 80s. In 1985, 1986, 1988, and 1989, with Nelson Piquet breaking that streak in 1987. What a run for Prost. The 1990s would then kick off with generational talent Ayrton Senna winning the title in 1990 and 1991. Surprisingly, under this format, these would be the only 2 titles Senna would get in his career. Nigel Mansell would beat Riccardo Patrese in 1992 to win his one and only title of his career. Prost would then cap off his illustrious F1 career by winning his 5th championship in 1993. Also, he racked up a total of 51 race wins during his career. And fun fact, Prost was the runner-up finisher in points 4 other times, which could have set his career total at 9 championships. The remarkable career would come to an end in 1993, with Prost retiring on top. Damon Hill would beat eventual and IRL champion Michael Schumacher in 1994. And similar to how it has been before, the outcome of this title was due to the lack of starts for Schumacher. He would only run 14 races in the season, compared to Hill running the full 16 race schedule. Meanwhile, these two would go back and forth the next 2 seasons, with Schumacher winning his first title in 1995 and Hill winning his second in 1996. Schumacher would then go back on top in 1997, beating IRL champion Jacques Villeneuve. And the 1900s would officially come to an end with two drivers winning the only titles of their careers, Mika Hakkinen in 1998 and Eddie Irvine in 1999. We would kick off the 2000s with Michael Schumacher now finally breaking Juan Manuel Fangio's 46-year-old record of winning 4 straight championships. In fact, Schumacher would win 5 straight championships from 2000 to 2004. And during this period, Schumacher would now have the record of winning the most championships in F1 history, getting that illustrious 7th title in 2004. Technically, if you want to blend the motorsports together, he joins Richard Petty and Jeff Gordon with 7 titles in motorsports, but that's not the focus. But despite the continued years of driving, this would be the final championships Schumacher would win in his career. We would then see another repeat champion over the next 2 seasons, with Fernando Alonso winning it in 2005 and 2006. As we hit 2007, it was an absolute dogfight for the title. Lewis Hamilton would win his first title by just 23 points over Fernando Alonso in second and 26 points over IRL champion Kimi Räikkönen back in P3. Hamilton would win his second straight title in 2008, beating Felipe Massa by 54 points. And yes, despite the controversy, it would have taken a lot more for Felipe Massa to beat Hamilton that year. The decade would then come to an end, just like it's supposed to, with Jenson Button getting his one and only championship in 2009. As we enter the 2010s, they look very identical to real life. Sebastian Vettel would be just the 3rd driver in F1 history to win 4 championships in a row, getting it done from 2010 to 2013. And during this period, Fernando Alonso would be the runner-up in all 4 of those seasons, bringing the total number of runner-up finishes and points to 5 for Alonso, which, by the way, is the most in F1 history, but we'll look at that list at the end of the video. Following this, Lewis Hamilton would win his 3rd and 4th F1 titles in 2014 and 2015, beating championship rival Nico Rosberg in both of those seasons. Rosberg did see this and realized he wanted to be a champion as well, and he did that in 2016, beating Hamilton by just 39 points. Fun fact, this would also be the 2nd time a father-son duo won F1 championships, joining his father, Keke Rosberg, as well as Graham and Damon Hill. Lewis Hamilton would then finish the 2010s and become the 4th driver in F1 history to win at least 4 straight championships from 2017 to 2020. Hamilton's title in 2020 would be his record-setting 8th championship, passing Michael Schumacher for the most all time. Concluding the long F1 history of Winston points, it looks pretty similar to real life. Max Verstappen would kick off the 2021 season by winning his first F1 title in an intense championship duel with Lewis Hamilton. We all know how that has turned out. Hamilton was unable to pull off that record, tying 5th straight championship and 9th all-time, and lost to Verstappen by just 3 points. Verstappen would then become the 5th driver in F1 history to win 4 straight titles, as he would win the next 3 from 2022 to 2024. In this time, Verstappen also broke 2 more records due to this format. In 2023, he was the beneficiary of the largest gap between 1st and 2nd in points history. 19-time winner Verstappen that season beat 2-time winner Sergio Perez by a monstrous 580 points in only 22 races. Absolutely insane. Then in 2024, Verstappen set the record for most points achieved in the Winston points era by earning 4,031 points, just beating the previous record set by himself last season at 4,005 points. And that'll do it. That concludes the F1 history using the NASCAR Winston points format. Now let's take a look at some quick combined stats over here. Over the sport's 74-year history, we have seen a total of 35 different champions, with 16 of them winning more than just 1 title. Hamilton officially holds the record with 8 total championships, beating Michael Schumacher by just 1. And how about 27-year-old Max Verstappen already with 4 championships, which already sits him in a tie for 5th place all time, looking to win a record-tying 5th straight this season in 2025. Looking at the combined number of runner-ups, we have also seen 43 drivers get 2nd place, with just 22 of them finishing runner-up in points more than once. Fernando Alonso sits at the top of the board with 5 in total, and Alan Prost sits 2nd place with 4. Just imagine how different some of these drivers' careers would have looked if they converted just a few of those runner-ups into championships. Alonso, he could have had 7 titles. Prost could have had 9. Nelson Piquet and Ayrton Senna could have had 5. And even crazier, Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher could have had 10. An absolute crazy 10 championships in just 74 years. That's 20 between 2 drivers. Absolutely crazy to think. Looking at some more stats we got here are the seasons ranked by total entries. Like I mentioned earlier, 1950 and 1960 had the Indianapolis 500 on the schedule, so that immediately led to a lot more different entries. If you want to put an asterisk over these first 11 seasons, here's still what the rest would have looked like. Seasons in the mid to late 1900s definitely included more entries, but only 2018 and 2019 had the least amount of entries due to the 20-car limit, but this could definitely change soon with the addition of Cadillac to F1 for the 2026 season. Next up, here are the champions ranked by the amount of points they scored at the end of the season. Now, due to the longer season nowadays, this helped Verstappen take over the top 4 spots on this list, though most of the 2010 seasons are just as impressive. These longer seasons and large point titles have also helped to raise the average by quite a bit the last few years, which you can see there at the very bottom. Finally, here are the seasons ranked by the gap between 1st and 2nd in the final point standings. Like we mentioned earlier, 1964 is seeing the closest gap with just 1 point between the top 2, 1984 with 2 points, and 2021, the crazy battle between Hamilton and Verstappen at 3 points. If you look at it, 5 seasons have seen the gap be less than 10 points, and 13 of them have seen the gap be less than 20 points. From here, kind of gets pretty evenly spread out. In total, 42 seasons out of the 74 have seen the gap be less or equal to 100 points, which is a whopping 57%. Whether you think F1 is competitive or not nowadays, these standings show that over the history, it has been pretty competitive. But after that, we have seen plenty of mid-100 point gaps. Some 200 points to 300 points, a 400 point, and the largest obviously being 580, almost 600, which is absolutely insane. But in the end, it keeps the average at just about over 100 with 115 points at the average. And that'll do it for this recap. Overall, for a bit, I've been a big fan of doing stats like these, and seeing what the different seasons would look like with this format has been pretty cool. Obviously, I've done the 3 NASCAR National Series, Cup, Xfinity Truck Series, but I've also done the ARCA Menards and IndyCar Series, which has been just as fun to calculate. But I am also in the process of working on more seasons that include the ARCA West and East, as well as the NASCAR Modified Series. If you want to see any more of these seasons recapped in a video just like this, let me know. But in the meantime, for any more motorsports or iRacing content, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.